Scott, have we got everything rolling?
Excuse me. Yes, sir. Just ready, waiting on 5:15.
Okay, good. And it is 5:15 according to my clock.
This is the February 15th, 2022 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals, zoning. President are Mr. Morrison, Mr. Jadon, Ms. Grass, Ms. Richards, and Mr. Robinson. Present from the planning staff are Mr. Batchella, Ms. Ashby, and Mr. Valentine. These proceedings are being recorded, and we ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We'll conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We'll first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, usually the Board of Zoning Appeals treats the matter as being uncontested and passes it as a matter of course. If, however, the city recommends against the application, or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who's in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We'll then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals, zoning, has the authority to do three things. First, to hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Second, to grant exceptions, special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And third, to grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum is present and qualified to vote. However, an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board members present and voting shall be required before a use variance may be granted. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. We have one item B5 that has been deferred tonight. That is B5, item is the 15 Beaton's Alley. It will not be heard tonight. First item on the agenda is the review of the minutes of the February 1st, 2022 board meeting. Everyone should have received copies of those. And are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to those minutes? Hearing none, Mr. Morrison moves for approval, seconded by Mr. Don. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison.
Aye.
Mr. Jadon.
Aye.
Ms. Grass.
Aye.
Ms. Richards.
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. Second item on the agenda is 236 St. Margaret Street, Wagner Terrace. Request special exception under section 54-110 to allow two-story addition porch, living room, extension, garage, bedrooms, bath, laundry room, game room that extends a non-conforming 4.5 west side setback, a non-conforming 21-foot front setback, 9 feet and 25 feet required. Request a variance from section 54.301 to allow a garage, exterior stair, storage, and outdoor shower addition with a 3-foot east side setback, 9 feet required, zoned SR2. Mr. Batchelder.
So this item has been on your agenda before. I think everybody's pretty much clear on what's being requested, but the property is in Wagner Terrace, residential property. And here's the zoning map showing the lot. And you see on this map the location of the existing single-family residence. Sits all the way over on the west side of the property, leaving a very wide side yard on the east side. And here's an aerial view showing the house and the lot. And we have the application materials submitted, the explanation, the survey showing that house on that lot with a 36-foot wide east side yard. The existing site plan and the proposed site plan. Now this is the revised site plan. At the last meeting when the board deferred this, I think there were two requests. Number one, that the applicant go back to the neighborhood association or seek their something in writing from them stating their position. And number two, as I recall, I think the stairs that were shown on the east side of the garage, of the proposed garage, which were on the exterior of that garage, I think the board was interested in having the applicant consider moving those to the back of the property or back of the garage instead of on the side of the garage. So anyway, the applicant has revised his plans, and actually these plans show the stairs in the same general location, except that there is a enclosure now, so that there are interior stairs instead of exterior stairs. And this is the previous submittal showing those stairs on the exterior of that garage. And the other thing that's happened is that the garage, because there are now walls enclosing those stairs, the garage addition is a little bit wider. So it has the space between the proposed garage and the existing house has gotten a little bit narrower. This is the current plan right here. So, and then there are more images that the applicant submitted with his revised plans as well. So we go through those. These are the photographs showing the existing house and the property. You see the existing driveway. Here is the proposed perspectives. And the other thing I should mention, let me go back because I forgot about this. The other part of the request concerns this front porch right here. And that porch is an extension of the non-conforming west side setback. As you can see, the actual setback line is right about here. That's 9 feet off the side property line. So the existing house is 4.5 feet off that side property line. The porch will be roughly the same setback from that side property line. So that's one special exception request for the extension of that non-conforming west side setback. The other is the extension of the non-conforming front setback with the addition of this garage on the side of the house. The house itself sits 21 feet back from the front property line. 25 is required. So that's an existing non-conforming situation. They want to simply extend basically that non-conforming setback over with this garage addition. The garage will be a little bit, looks like maybe two, I don't know exactly what that is, but it's slightly maybe 2 feet back from the front edge of the house, but it's still within that front setback. So that is the special exception request, and the variance request has to do with the 3-foot side setback on the east side versus the 9 that's required. So those are the requests before you. So back to the photos and the perspective view. So this is that enclosed stair right here. And then the applicant has, of course, revised their floor plans to illustrate that enclosed stair, the second floor, and the elevations. And then I just inserted the previous elevation here just to, again, refresh your memory on that. So this is the proposed current proposal. And then this is the previous submittal with that exterior stair in the side of the garage. And then more elevations. These really didn't change from before. You see the front porch addition here. And revised front. And then these are the support letters that we saw before from the neighbors in the immediate area. The applicant was not able to get anything from the neighbor to the east, who would be on the side where the variance is requested, because they're apparently in the process of renovating and flipping that house. This is what the applicant provided from the neighborhood association. So these are the minutes from the neighborhood association meeting. And this is the discussion, and it comes down, and I've kind of put the arrow here on this to illustrate the location of this, but it says no one expressed opposition. Treasurer Thomas made a motion that the Wagner Terrace Neighborhood Association writes a letter in support for the Bishop's plan as written. Mrs. Gursky seconded. The motion passed with unanimous support, 16 yeas. So that is the information that the applicant provided just to document the neighborhood association's actions. And this is from a meeting back in November 15th of last year. So that's the information that we received. And let's see, I'm going to go back to this. And I guess I think it would be probably appropriate to hear from the applicant, since they can speak to these matters as well. But I think I've covered everything accurately.
Is the applicant present?
It's Mr. Bishop. Scott, if you can promote him.
Hey, Lee, I had to make you the host again.
Oh.
I'm dealing with some technical difficulties. So yeah, you'll.
Okay, so I should promote him? Okay. I've just promoted him to become a panelist.
Mr. Bishop?
Can you hear me now?
Mr. Bishop,
Yes.
would you please allow Mr. Batchel to swear you in?
Yes, sir.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Would you please state your case?
Sure. So I appreciate everyone's time this evening. I appreciate the comments we had on the last one. I think they were all very important and very valuable comments. I went back and studied the location of the stair, and the first thought was to move it to the rear of the building, just like we talked about whether we enclose it in the last meeting or we relocate it to the rear of the building. So my first thought was the simplest is just to move it to the rear of the building. But in doing so, it prevented two things. One, what I was trying to do is prevent as many, I was trying to maintain the views from the second floor to the rear backyard area, as well as to the front, and not directing as all the windows towards my neighbors, just for privacy. So in doing so, none of the spaces, they had to look over the stairs, or the stair was in the way. So it prevented me from being able to do that. The second reason that I ended up relocating them back where they were and studying and closing them is I'm actually showing a garage door at the rear as well. Reason being, my kids constantly take the toys in and out of the garage, and it'd be nice if we could just roll the garage door up. They can kind of flow in and out, and having that staircase there, we couldn't get the clearance to be able to do so. So those were kind of the two reasons why we ended up falling back to where we were. But in trying to enclose it, bringing the scale of the stair down, so that way, again, just trying to keep it as low as possible. I mean, I wasn't able to bring the scale of the whole building down anymore. Unfortunately, we only had 8-foot ceilings on our second floor and first floor. So just in general, the scale of it is hard to bring it down any more than I already have. The roof pitches are pretty minor. So that way, again, just trying to keep it as low as possible in relation to the existing building.
Any questions for Mr. Bishop from the board?
I do. This is Allison Grass. I am just wondering what the hardship is for the variance request.
Sure. So the hardship is that this item B, where it generally doesn't apply to neighboring areas. So 234, which is right next to me, they have a 3-foot east side setback. I have 245 Gordon Street. Has a 3-foot setback, 42 6th Ave, 40 6th Ave, 23 Parkwood Drive, 116 St. Margaret. All of those seem to have this 3-foot setback from them. For either some of these were detached, some of these are attached garages. So I have quite a few that I've listed out here that are just generally don't apply to others, and that's the reason for the hardship.
Any other questions for Mr. Bishop? Anyone else present who wishes to speak on behalf of the application?
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
When you presented to the neighborhood association, it said that the garage apartment was going to be about 500 feet. Is that square feet? Sorry. Is that still an accurate?
Yeah, the second. Yes, the second floor is still. You can see it right on the page that's on there right now in the lower left hand or lower right hand corner. Excuse me. It says new second floor, 500 square feet. Just with the pitches of the roofs and everything, it's not very big.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Ms. Ashby, is there anyone present in opposition to this application?
No, Mr. Robinson, no one in opposition.
Any other comments, questions, or motions from the board?
Well, did the city declare that it's in favor of this news?
Well, I had supported it originally when it came before the board. And but I think the comments that the board had at that meeting and the last meeting were good comments and good concerns, valid concerns. So, but I had recommended in favor when I presented this before, and that's still, I guess, my position. I would say.
I'll
I'm
tell the
still-
board, I personally feel that the stairs make a better presentation being enclosed than they do be open. I know initially Mr. Bishop said he left them open because not is to avoid massing of the building, but I think they make a better presentation enclosed, even though they do encroach.
Well, my feeling is that they still would be better in the back of the house.
I agree with that too. I just feel like they're adding so much, extra square footage, whatever. That's the issue of going into the 9-foot setback. I don't really see the hardship. I'm having trouble with that. And I appreciate Mr. Bishop's explanation. I'm just still having trouble. Mr. Batchelder, can you speak to the hardship?
Well, I think it's a little bit tough when you have all this room, it is a bit tough to justify going all the way down to 3 feet. Now, I'm not sure what other garages Mr. Bishop is referring to, but I'm assuming that most of those are probably towards the back of the properties where they're maybe more typically located close to, or if not on, side and rear property lines. So, but I could be wrong about that. But I think, it is a little bit tough to argue for that variance when it's 6 feet of a variance, basically reducing a 9-foot setback to 3 feet. So.
Yeah, 234 right next door, you can see in that image, has a 3-foot setback where the garage is attached.
Right over here.
Mhm.
Well, my main concern was that the community agreed with it, especially the neighborhood association.
Very difficult issue. The fact that there's a clean slate on that side of the house, and we're moving in to the setback by a relatively large amount, makes it difficult. And along with Mr. Jadon, I find it interesting that the neighborhood association had no issue with that. So it makes this very difficult.
But we also haven't heard from the neighbor right next door.
Well, they've been afforded more than ample opportunity to say something about it. So that's rather moot from that standpoint. Any other comments? Motions?
I move approval.
Motion for approval by Mr. Morrison. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jadon. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Jadon,
Aye.
Ms. Grass,
Nay.
Ms. Richards,
Nay.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. Let's see, now that creates an issue here. I'm assuming you're talking about the special exception and the variance. Let's take the variance first. Mr. Morrison, you vote, move that the variance be approved, and is seconded by Mr. Jadon. And Ms. Grass, Ms. Richards, y'all are voting against the variance,
That's correct.
and I vote for it. The variance allows the east side setback by a vote of 3-2. The special exception is, am I on target here, Mr. Batchelder?
Sure. We can take that one separately.
Special exception. Mr. Morrison, you're voting for approval of that, and Mr. Judon, you're voting second,
Correct.
and Ms. Grass and Ms. Richards, y'all are voting against it.
Can you clarify, are there two different special exceptions, one for the porch and one to extend for the garage?
Well, they're listed together, but yes, there's a special exception basically to extend the side setback for the porch, and then a special exception to extend the non-conforming front setback for the garage.
So are they two separate? I'm fine with the porch. I'm not fine
Yeah.
with the garage.
Okay.
Well, that is yes, the front setback and the west side setback, Ms. Grass, that's and the special exception.
Well, no, it's the front. Yeah, and the west side, you're right, I'm
West and the front.
sorry.
Is that an issue, Ms. Grass?
I'm
Yeah.
confused now.
Is a front setback required and a west side setback required on the application?
It's the west.
Those both relate to the porch, Allison, I think.
Okay,
Both porch related.
I'm fine with the porch.
Okay, and Ms. Richards,
Yes, I'm fine with the porch.
all right, but so the special exception is approved on the by unanimous. I vote for approval as well. Special exception is unanimously approved, and the variance is approved by a 3-2 vote. Both are approved. Did I get all that right, Lee?
Well, the porch requires the west side special exception, and the garage requires the front setback.
Right.
The porch does not need a variance to encroach into the front setback, because porches are allowed to encroach, porches and stairs, provided they're at least 10 feet from the front property line.
So the building itself requires that front setback.
Correct. The actual garage addition requires the front setback special
All
exception.
right, let's start this over again. It was misstated. My apology. Special exception requires a 4.5 west side setback, and that's due to the porch. It also requires a 21-foot front setback, and that's due to the garage addition.
Correct.
Is there a motion for approval of that?
I move approval.
Move for approval by Mr. Morrison. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Judon. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Judon,
Aye.
Ms. Grass,
Nay.
Ms. Richards,
Nay.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. Now, that special exception is a unanimous vote. I mean, a majority vote carries that, Mr. Batchelor.
That's correct.
So by a vote of 3-2, the special exception is approved. And we've already been through the variance, and that got approved. So both the variance and the special exception have been approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your perseverance, Mr. Bishop, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item B1, 363, 367, and 369 King Street. Request third one-year extension of a vested right that expires on April 3rd, 2022 pursuant to section 54-962. Vested right pertains to a special exception granted with conditions under section 54-511 for 21 parking spaces to allow 9,139 square feet of retail space and 70 dwelling units. zoned MU-2/WH. Mr. Batchelor.
So this is an extension of a vested right, and we believe it meets all of the requirements to be extended and should be extended. So our recommendation is to approve this third one-year extension.
City recommends approval. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak on this item?
No, Mr. Robinson, no one is present.
Motion for approval made by Mr. Jadon, seconded by Ms. Grass. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Jadon,
Aye.
Ms. Grass,
Aye.
Ms. Richards,
Aye.
Ms. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. Next item on the agenda is item B223 Reed Street, East Side. Request first one-year extension of a vested right that expires on February 18th, 2022, pursuant to section 54-962. Vested right pertains to a variance granted with a condition to allow single-family residence and HVAC platform, zone DR2F. Mr. Batchelor.
This is, again, an extension of a vested right, and we believe it satisfies all the requirements for an extension, and we recommend approval.
City recommends approval. Ms. Ashby, is anyone present who wishes to speak on this?
No, Mr. Robinson.
The motion for approval made by Ms. Grass, seconded by Ms. Richards. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Jadon,
Aye.
Ms. Grass,
Aye.
Ms. Richards,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. Next item on the agenda is 721 King Street West Side. Request special exception under section 54-511 to allow existing restaurant to add 390 square feet of outdoor patron use area without meeting the off-street parking requirements. Additional patron area requires 3 additional parking spaces. The zoning ordinance prohibits use of the 3 existing leased off-site parking spaces due to proximity of residentially zoned property, zone general business. Mr. Batchelor.
This concerns a property at the corner of King and Race in the West Side neighborhood. The property is commercially zoned. It contains this 2-story corner store building, and the ground floor is a restaurant called Melfi's. Upstairs is an office, but the ground floor restaurant was approved a few years ago. I believe they've been there for roughly 3 years, and been very successful. These are photographs of the existing building and the interior restaurant space. You can see it's very nice. And so anyway, they have an existing restaurant that operates with interior patron area and an outdoor patron area that I'll show you in just a second. But this is the overall site plan, which I will come back to because it does show an off-site parking location, and I'll explain the issue with that. But anyway, this is a blow up of that plan that shows both properties. And in this case, this is the corner store, Melfi's property at 721 King Street. The area in green is the existing outdoor patron area. Might be a little bit larger than that, but that's where it is. And then, of course, you see the interior patron area right here. And then the bar, kitchen area, and then there's more space back here for kitchen storage space. You see 3 parking spaces on site, 2 that are accessed off Ray Street, one, a handicap space that's accessed directly off King Street. Those remain, but they would like to add the area shown with the yellow highlighting right here as additional outside patron area. And in order to do that, they are required to provide 3 more parking spaces that they do not have on site, thanks to the typical corner store situation we have throughout the peninsula, which is a large building on a relatively small lot, very little room for any parking. And that's, again, very typical. We have a variety of commercial and residential uses typically in these buildings. This one is all commercial, and that's actually zoned commercially, it's zoned general business. So that is not an issue, the commercial use. It's just simply the parking. And the off-site location, they do provide some of the parking spaces for the office there. They have additional space that they could use for the restaurant patron area, except that we have a provision in our zoning ordinance that prevents restaurant from being able to count off-site leased parking spaces if they're on properties that are within so many feet of residentially zoned properties. And in this case, that King Street property, which has a commercial zoning, backs up to residentially zoned properties. And so we didn't want to encourage people to use those properties for parking to meet requirements. But in this case, they don't have any other choice. And they have presented this to the North Central Neighborhood Association. And here's a letter from the president of the North Central Neighborhood Association, which is located directly to the north, on the north side of Ray Street. So south of Ray Street, it's the West Side Neighborhood Association. North of Ray Street, it's the North Central. And both neighborhoods are impacted by parking issues up there. So the ability to provide extra parking spaces on that off-site location for this restaurant and office is very helpful. And you see this neighborhood association does support this. And I'm not sure what the position of the West Side neighborhood is, because they've never contacted us, and I don't believe they're opposed because they haven't expressed any opposition. And maybe the applicants can speak to that more, but I'm comfortable in saying that there's no opposition to this request. So it's a small increase. There's existing patron area already right next to this area where they want to add more patron area. The house next door is actually a commercially zoned property as well, and they've never expressed any opposition or concerns about the operation of the restaurant here. So for all those reasons, we think they meet the special exception requirement. There's simply not enough space on the lot to provide the parking that the reasonable use of this property provides, and they've found an off-site location where they can provide those spaces. So we recommend approval of this request.
The city recommends approval and stated that there is no opposition.
That's correct. And Penny, you can verify that too, right?
That is correct.
Yep. Thank you.
Any questions the board might have on this particular application? Motion for approval made by Ms. Richards, seconded by Mr. Morrison. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison?
Aye.
Mr. Jadon?
Aye.
Ms. Grass?
Aye.
Ms. Richards?
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. Item B4, 141 East Bay Street, French Quarter, for a special exception under section 54-511 to allow new restaurant use with 2,014 square feet of inside patron use area without providing required parking spaces. 21 spaces required, zone limited business. Mr. Batchelder.
So this is a commercially zoned property on East Bay Street in the French Quarter. And it's one of those interesting properties that has been sitting for a while. And we've got a applicant who is proposing to do an event space within this building. As I'll show you, it's really quite an amazing building. This is actually not the correct location, so let me skip this. I just noticed that. So this is the correct location on East Bay Street. And so it sits just north of a surface parking lot, large surface parking lot that is owned by a bank. And commercially zoned, as you can see, LB, limited business. And this is a view of the front of the building from the street, 141 East Bay Street. This is actually a landmark property. It's a category 1 property under the city's rating system for historic properties. And that means it's the highest rating possible in the same category as other really notable buildings, including the Exchange Building right down the street. It is individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places. I found this, I thought this was the case, and I found it, and I thought I'd throw it in here just for information because it just highlights the significance of this building, which has been an office building and a restaurant in the past, but has been vacant for quite some time. So we've got an application and we've got plans, and this is a description of the request and why they feel that they meet the requirements for the special exception. And just referring back to the map that I've already shown you, there is simply no room for any off-street parking on site. There's no driveway accessibility to the street. There's no room on the property itself. So parking is not an option on the property. And the building relative to the lot is quite large. So you see here the floor plans showing the proposed use. First floor is shown on the bottom. So there'd be a large dining area and bar area that's shown in blue. And then the back portion, the gray portion, would all be back of house area and restrooms. On the second floor of the middle section, there is some additional function space. And then again, back of house in the gray area at the back. The front part of the building is what I've never been inside, but I understand it's really amazing. And it's a large loft space. So it's just basically it's a two-story space within that area. And and so this illustrates some parking that is available nearby. Of course, there's a city parking garage. That's number 3 on this illustration. There is some metered parking space, and that's number 4 across East Bay Street. 2 is the bank parking lot, and number 1 is a privately owned parking lot, which is available at the present time, may not be available in the future if 161 East Bay Street, the former South End Brewery building, is completed and occupied. So, but anyway, those are surface parking lots that are in the area plus the parking garage. And this is information from the, I guess the person that manages the Wells Fargo parking lot to the south of 141. So it's not available during the day, but it is available for paid parking, hourly parking in evenings, I guess. So, so that's really the only options down in that part of the commercial core of the city. But just going back to the building itself, it's an unusual building. It was originally a bank, and of course those days are probably gone, and this would be used for a bank. But an event space that utilizes that space and makes it accessible to the public would be a great thing, I think. So, and I know that the applicant has spoken with the French Quarter Neighborhood Association. Mr. Keys has indicated that. And we have not heard from anybody from that neighborhood to express comments or concerns. And that I know the neighborhood president, and I'm sure she would contact me if she had any concerns about that. So I'm very comfortable recommending for approval of this request. Of course, the hours, it being limited business, the hours of operation would be limited to no later than 11 p.m. at night. So I think that helps to keep it a use that could be there for a long time and be neighborhood friendly. So for all those reasons, I recommend approval of this request.
City recommends approval. Ms. Ashby, is there any opposition?
There's no opposition, Mr. Robinson.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? No questions. Mr. Morrison moves for approval, seconded by Mr. Judon. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison.
Aye.
Mr. Judon.
Aye.
Ms. Grass.
Aye.
Ms. Richards.
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. Next item on the agenda, item B5, 15 Beaton's Alley has been deferred. Item number 6, 1917 Campion Hall Road, Sandhurst. Request a variance after the fact from section 54-301 to allow 8-foot fence along the rear and side property line and an 8-foot gate to the side property line. 6-foot height limitation. Zone SR1, Mr. Batchelder.
So this is a residential property, West Ashley in Sandhurst. You can see Campion Hall Road is a street that parallels Sam Rittenberg. There's separation there, but you see that the house fronts on Campion Hall, and beyond that is Sam Rittenberg. But this is a residential neighborhood, and the homeowners really feel that they need the 8-foot high fence. I guess they have some concerns about neighbors to the back of their property. But this is an aerial view showing the property in question. And here's a zoning map illustrating how it relates to the surrounding properties. You'll see that they have letters of support from both 1913 and 1921 Campion Hall Road. And here's a view of the front of the property and their application form with the explanation about why they feel that they need to provide this polar fence. And it would be along the rear of the property and the sides as well, but not extending beyond the front of the house. So here's a site plan just illustrating the limits of the 8-foot fence. They've already constructed the fence. They did that without getting the permits, and I'm not sure exactly what prompted them come forward and remedy the situation, want to remedy the situation, but this is already in place. More photographs. More photographs. And then these are the emails from those neighboring property owners on Camping Hall Road indicating that they have no objections to the fence. And we haven't heard of any objections or concerns from any of the neighbors on the back side of the property. So I'm willing to support the variance for those reasons.
City recommends approval. Mr. Batchelder, the application said, and side property line. It really should be lines, right? Both lines.
Right. Right.
So that's what we're talking about.
Right.
City recommends approval. Ms. Ashby, is anyone present in opposition?
No, Mr. Robinson, no one is present in opposition.
Any questions or comments from the board? Motion for approval made by Mr. Judon, seconded by Ms. Grass. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Judon,
Aye.
Ms. Grass,
Aye.
Ms. Richards.
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. Item number B7, 5 Gordon Street, Wagner Terrace. Request a variance from section 54-301 to allow one-story additions, dining room, expansion, bedroom with a 3-foot and 7.5-foot west side setback, 9 feet required, zoned SR2. Mr. Batchelder.
So this is a residential property in Wagner Terrace. And the unusual thing about this block of Gordon Street, and it seems to be on both sides of Gordon Street, the houses are set over, typically houses are set over close to one side property line. Typically that's the east side property line or the north side property line. In this case, the houses in this block, which I think is a little bit unusual, are set all the way over towards the west side property line. So the wider side yard ends up being on the east side of the house. And so that is one reason this is coming before you. So here is the existing house and property. You see a large backyard. And here's the existing house. It's 1 story, back of the house right here. And site plan survey of the property actually showing that house sitting all the way over, just 1 foot off of that west side property line. So the proposal is to construct a 1-story addition behind the house and with these bump outs that would be as close as 3 feet at this location, 7.5 feet back here. So a little bit into the setback, but the other side of the addition fits within the setback line of 9 feet, but it's a little bit closer to the side property line than the existing house. And so anyway, it ended up being a variance instead of a special exception with the way we looked at it. And the variance, of course, is for these 2 encroachments over here. So our recommendation is for approval. We think that they have a case for a variance, and they have contacted that neighboring property owner. These are just elevations showing the existing and proposed. This is the proposed, and this is from the neighboring property owner on the side of the house where the variances are being requested. So they seen the plans and don't have any objection to them. And again, these homes are typically constructed to meet or not meet the setback requirements that the city imposed later on. And that's what creates these issues. And so anyway, we recommend approval of this request.
City recommends approval. Ms. Ashby, is anyone present in opposition?
No, Mr. Robinson, no one present in opposition.
Any comments or questions from the board? Motion for approval made by Mr. Don, seconded by Ms. Grass. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Jadon,
Aye.
Ms. Grass,
Aye.
Ms. Richards.
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. And that completes the meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, y'all have a nice night.
Good night.
Same
Take
to
care.
you.